The letter that changed Willow Draw did not ask Clara Wren whether she was pretty. It asked whether she could tell sweet water from sour. She read that sentence twice on the freight platform at Mercy Crossing, with her canvas bag at her feet and her sewing basket pressed against her hip because the clasp had been broken since Omaha and would spill needles if she forgot to hold it shut. The rest of the letter was plain. A cattle place 18 miles out, one room in the back of the house, cooking, washing, ledger work if she knew figures. Room and board first, a respectable arrangement later if both parties found reason for it. No flowery talk, no promise that the country was beautiful, no line about a lonely man's heart. Just one sentence that did not belong in a marriage advertisement. If you know the smell of sour water, say so when you arrive. Clara folded the letter back along its creases and put it inside her coat. Around her, the town kept moving in the thin, cold way new towns moved when they were trying to look permanent. A freight wagon clattered past with barbed wire coils stacked like gray nests. Two boys swept dust from a storefront boardwalk and raised more dust than they cleared. A woman in the mercantile window paused with a bolt of calico in her arms and watched Clara without turning her head. Clara had been watched before. She was 32 years old. She had buried a husband after a mill wheel took him in high water, then buried a baby before the next thaw. After that, she had learned to live in rooms that were not hers, to mend other people's cuffs by lamplight, and to keep her face calm when a person mistook quiet for weakness. She had not come west because she believed in second chances. She had come because grief still required rent. At the far end of the platform, a buckboard stood beside the stock pens. The man holding the reins did not look toward her right away. He was bent over the near horse, lifting one front hoof, scraping packed mud from the frog with the small blade of his pocket knife. He did it slowly, with the patience of a man who could not afford to lose an animal because he had been careless for 5 minutes. That told Clara something before his face did. The buckboard was old, not falling apart, but mended in layers. One sideboard was darker than the other. One wheel had a newer iron band. The harness had been oiled, but the leather had cracks in it deep enough to hold dust. The man straightened when she came within 10 feet. He was tall in a worn-out way, lean through the shoulders, with a face browned by weather and a beard trimmed more from necessity than vanity. His hat brim had lost its shape. His eyes were gray, steady, and tired enough that they made him look older than he probably was. He said, "Mrs. Wren?" "I am." Elias Rourke. He did not offer his hand at first, not from rudeness, from uncertainty. Then he seemed to decide politeness still had weight, wiped his palm on his coat, and held it out. She shook it. His hand was rough, warm, and cut across the knuckles. He looked at her sewing basket, then at the bag beside her feet. "That's all?" "That's what needed bringing." He nodded, as if that was an answer he understood. Then he said, "There's a room behind the pantry. It faces south. You'll have light most of the day." It was almost the same kind of detail as the sour water, practical, unromantic, careful in a way that did not announce itself. Clara set her basket in the buckboard and climbed up without waiting for help. Elias noticed, but he did not comment. He tied her bag behind the seat, checked the horse's hoof one more time, and took his place beside her. The road out of Mercy Crossing bent north first, then west, away from the tracks and the fresh paint of town. For the first several miles, neither of them spoke. The wheels found the ruts and stayed in them. The wind came low across the open ground, carrying dust, dry grass, and the faint metal smell of weather that had not yet decided whether it wanted to rain. Clara watched the country. The grass was thin, not dead, not yet, but pale in long, uneven patches. The kind of pale that meant the roots were still fighting while the top gave up. Fence posts leaned in places where water had once softened the soil, then left it hard again. Cattle trails cut across the rises like old scars. Elias drove with both hands loose on the reins. After nearly an hour, he said, "You grew up around stock?" "Dairy." "That's not cattle." "It is when the cow is sick." He glanced at her then. She kept looking at the ground. "My father had 30 jerseys on bottomland east of Cedar Rapids," she said. "He believed a cow would tell you the truth before a man would. He was usually right." Elias faced the road again. "The herd was 58 last spring," he said. 39 now. He did not say it with drama. That made the number worse. Clara let it sit between them. "Drought?" she asked. "Partly." "Predators?" "One calf to coyotes." "Disease?" "Some kind. They go thin, stop chewing, stand off by themselves. 2 went blind in August. Gideon says it's cursed ground." "Who is Gideon?" "My hand. Been with the place since before my wife died." There it was. A small door opened and shut. Clara did not push it. They crossed a dry wash where the wagon jolted hard enough that her basket jumped under her hand. On the far bank she saw a strip of grass growing greener than the rest. Not much. Just a low seam in the land, hidden unless a person was already looking down. She turned her head and watched it as long as she could. Elias noticed. "That draw runs after a storm," he said. "Only after a storm?" "Used to hold longer." "When?" He was quiet a moment. "My father's time." Clara said nothing, but she remembered the line in the letter, "Sweet water from sour." Willow Draw Ranch sat beyond a low ridge that did not look important until the wagon crested it. Then the whole place appeared at once. A house with a sagging porch but a straight roofline. A barn broad enough for a larger life. 2 sheds, 1 smokehouse, a corral built for more animals than the ground now held. A windmill stood near the trough, its wheel turning in short, tired jerks. 39 cattle moved slowly in the near pasture. Clara counted without meaning to. The number matched what he had said. But the corral did not. The fencing, the barn, the hay racks, the worn paths to water, all of it had been made for abundance. The ranch had the shape of a man in a coat too large for him after sickness. Elias stopped the wagon at the top of the rise. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. Clara understood that he was seeing the place through her eyes and not liking what it showed. He said, "It was better once." She looked at the barn, then the slope, then the cattle spread too thin across dry pasture. "The bones are sound," she said. He turned toward her. She nodded at the barn. "Roofline's good, posts aren't twisted, windmill still pulls some. Whoever built the place expected it to last. My father built most of it." "Then your father believed in more than luck." Elias did not answer. He lifted the reins and they rolled down toward the yard. Gideon Pike came out of the barn before the buckboard stopped. He was older than Elias by at least 20 years, with a white beard cut close to his jaw and shoulders bowed from a lifetime of lifting things no sensible body should lift alone. His left knee turned stiffly, as if it had a history it repeated in bad weather. He looked at Clara, then at Elias. "That her?" "That's her." Gideon shifted the piece of baling wire in his hand. "Can she cook?" Clara climbed down from the buckboard with her sewing basket under one arm. "I can hear too." Gideon blinked once. Elias looked away, but not fast enough to hide the almost smile. The room behind the pantry was smaller than Elias had made it sound. A narrow bed, a washstand, a peg on the wall. One window facing south, the glass wavy but unbroken. Clara counted that as a kindness and a luxury. She unpacked practical things first: a spare dress, a comb, a thread roll, a small knife with a bone handle, a tin of salt she had carried through 3 towns because salt was cheap only when you already had some. When she stepped into the kitchen, she found the stove cold and the ash box full. The wood bin held 3 crooked sticks and a dead beetle. The flour barrel had flour enough for 2 days, maybe 3. The beans were in a crock under the table, the salt pork hung too close to the stove, and the coffee tin was half full but badly closed. No woman had managed this kitchen in a long time. That was not an insult to the men. It was a fact with consequences. Clara cleaned the ash box, laid a fire, moved the pork, found onions softening in a sack behind the door, cut away what had spoiled and saved what had not. By the time Elias came in from the barn, the stove had caught. He stopped at the threshold. It was not surprise exactly. It was the look of a man seeing an ordinary thing and realizing he had forgotten ordinary could still happen. Clara did not turn around. "You eat supper at a table?" she asked, "or wherever the plate finds you?" "Table, mostly." "Then mostly can sit down." Gideon came in 10 minutes later, sniffed the air, and removed his hat without being told. Elias washed at the basin. Clara noticed he sat with his back to the wall and his eyes toward the door. Men who had lost things often kept their bodies ready for the next loss. She put beans, pork, and corn cakes on the table. Gideon looked into his bowl. "That much onion was hiding in this house?" "It was trying to leave," Clara said. "I stopped it." Gideon made a sound that was not quite a laugh. Elias ate quietly, but he ate everything. Afterward, he carried his own plate to the basin. Gideon did the same. Clara had not expected that. She noted it and did not decide too much from it. That night she lay in the small room with the south window and listened to the house. Old boards settling. Wind pressing at the eaves, a cow coughing once beyond the barn, the windmill turning, stopping, turning again. She had slept in rooms where the walls were thinner and the future worse. Still, she did not sleep quickly. She thought about the cattle, about the green seam in the dry wash, about the line in the letter, "Sweet water from sour." She had not come to save a ranch, but the ranch had already begun telling on itself. By gray light, Clara had the stove lit and coffee boiling. Elias came in with frost on the shoulders of his coat. Gideon followed, rubbing his bad knee. Neither man seemed to know what to do with hot food waiting before sunup. Clara set plates down and went to the window. The cattle stood near the trough in a loose, dull cluster. A few drank. Most waited. One red cow lowered her head, sniffed the water, then turned away. Clara watched longer. Elias said behind her, "Something wrong?" "Maybe." Gideon muttered, "Everything's wrong." Clara picked up the coffee pot and refilled his cup without looking at him. That usually means one thing is wrong in several places. Gideon looked at Elias, as if to ask where this woman had come from. Elias was watching Clara. After breakfast, she asked to see the trough, the well, and the lowest pasture. Gideon snorted. "You've been here 12 hours. "Then I am only 12 hours late." The old man stared at her. Elias stood and reached for his coat. "I'll saddle the bay." The bay mare was short, square, and sensible. Clara liked her immediately. Elias mounted a sorrel with one white blaze. Gideon stayed behind, claiming the fence would not mend itself, though Clara suspected he wanted to watch from the yard and judge whether she sat a horse like a person or cargo. She rode like a person. They started at the windmill. The trough boards were crusted white at the edges, not heavy, not enough to call attention if you had seen it every day for years, but enough. Clara wet one finger, touched the crust, and tasted it. Elias stiffened. "Don't." She spat into the dirt. "Bitter. There's mineral in this country. There's mineral everywhere. This is more than mineral." She walked the length of the trough. A sour smell came up where the boards met in the corner. The windmill pumped slowly, bringing water from somewhere below, but the surface had a dull skin on it that moved wrong when the wind crossed it. "How deep is the well?" 40 feet. "Always been this one?" "No, there was an old spring box north of the draw before my father put in the mill." "Why stop using it?" He looked toward the ridge. "Spring slowed, then caved. Father said the windmill was cleaner." Clara turned and looked at the cattle, thin flanks, dull coats, too much waiting at water and not enough drinking. "How many went blind?" "2. "When?" "August." "After the trough ran lowest?" Elias did not answer at once. That answer was still an answer. They rode the lower pasture next. The land dropped gradually toward the dry wash she had seen from the wagon. At the bottom, the grass changed, not green exactly, but alive in a way the upper ground was not. Copper stems, tight roots, a narrow line of sedge, gray at the top and green near the base. Clara dismounted and crouched. The soil in the wash gave under her fingers half an inch deeper than the slope above it. She dug with the tip of her knife. The top was dry. Beneath that, darker. The low place still had memory. Elias sat his horse behind her. "What are you looking for?" "The truth." He gave a dry sound. "You expect to find it in dirt?" "I usually do." She stood and pointed north along the wash. "The old spring was that way?" "Past the cottonwoods." "How far?" 20 minutes. "Then the water did not disappear. It only stopped coming where you wanted it." His jaw tightened. "You don't know that." "No," she said. "I know the cattle don't like the trough. The low grass is holding when the high grass isn't, and somebody abandoned a spring because a windmill looked more modern." Elias looked at her then, not offended, not pleased, struck, as if she had placed her hand on a bruise he had stopped admitting hurt. The spring box was worse than he had described. A ring of old stone sat under a lean of cottonwoods, half buried in silt, roots, and 20 years of neglect. A trickle showed at the base, then vanished under mud. The wood cover had rotted into black strips. Mosquitoes lifted from it when Clara stepped close. She knelt and pressed her palm beside the stone. Cold seeped up through the mud. Real cold. Not rainwater, not puddle memory. Spring water. Elias stood a few feet away, holding both horses. "My father lined it before I was born," he said. "Said it was the sweetest water on the place." "Then why let it go?" He did not answer quickly. That, too, was an answer. At last he said, "After my wife died, I kept what had to be kept." Clara looked at the ruined spring box, the cottonwood roots, the mud breathing water through its cracks. And this didn't shout loud enough. No. There was no self-pity in it, only weariness. Clara wiped her hand on her skirt and stood. "You have a spade?" "Several." "A mattock?" "One good one, one bad one." "Bring both." He looked at her. She said, "This is not cursed ground, Mr. Rourke. This is a stopped throat." They worked until their hands shook. Elias swung the mattock first, cutting through roots as thick as his thumb. Clara cleared mud from the stone, then moved silt with the spade, shallow cuts at an angle so the wall would not collapse inward. He wanted to dig straight down. She stopped him. "Water takes insult badly," she said. Despite himself, he looked amused. "Water has opinions?" "Only one, downhill." By noon, Gideon had ridden out with a sack of biscuits and a face full of disbelief. He watched them from horseback for several minutes. Then he climbed down with a groan, picked up the bad mattock, and said, "If we're going to be foolish, we may as well be foolish faster." By late afternoon, they had opened half the stone ring. The water still did not run. It seeped, it gathered, it vanished under the roots again. Gideon leaned on the handle of the mattock. "Told you. Cursed." Clara was too tired to answer sharply, which may have saved the old man. She went to the lower side of the box and scraped away grass with her boot. There, almost hidden under the mat of sedge, was a shallow channel lined with flat stones. Not natural. Built. She followed it 6 paces, then 10. A buried run. "Elias." He came over, breathing hard. She pointed. His face changed before he said a word. "My father put in a feeder cut," he said slowly, "to carry overflow to the lower draw." "Where does it go?" "Used to run clear to the hay meadow." "How many acres?" 80, maybe 90 if rain helped." "And now?" "Now nothing." Clara looked down the buried line, then back toward the thin cattle in the distance. "There is your missing grass." The next day the cold came down before dawn. The kind of cold that does not arrive with drama. It simply steps into the room before anyone else, and waits. Clara broke ice on the wash basin, wrapped her hands around hot coffee, and went back to the spring with Elias and Gideon before full light. The air cut at their lungs. Frost silvered the dead sedge. The horses steamed. They dug the feeder cut. Not cleanly, not easily. The stones had shifted. Cottonwood roots had netted across the channel. Silt had packed in tight enough that the spade rang against it like dull iron. 3 times the sidewall slumped, and they had to clear the same place twice. Gideon cursed the dead, the living, the federal land office, and every cottonwood tree between Mercy Crossing in Denver. Clara said less as the day went on. Her palms blistered, then opened. Mud soaked her skirt to the knee. Her shoulders burned. But every time she thought about stopping, she looked at the white crust on the trough in her mind and the red cow turning away from water. By afternoon, the mattock broke through a root mat with a sound like cloth tearing. At first, the water only darkened the bottom of the channel. Then it moved, slowly, clearly, with the stubbornness of something that had not forgotten where it was meant to go. Gideon stopped cursing. Elias stood over the cut with mud on his face, and both hands closed around the spade handle. Clara watched the first ribbon of spring water slide into the old feeder stones and start south. No one spoke for a while. There are moments when words would only prove a person had not understood what had happened. Finally, Gideon said very quietly, "Well, I'll be damned." Clara looked at Elias. "Not yet. We still have to keep it from flooding the bank, and the cattle cannot be put on the lower meadow until the grass catches." Elias nodded, but his eyes were still on the moving water. For the first time since she had met him, he looked not happy but unbraced. That evening he fixed the latch on the kitchen door. Clara had not asked him to. It had been sticking since she arrived. She had learned the trick of lifting with her knee and pulling at the same time. When she came in from feeding scraps to the chickens, the door opened clean. Elias stood at the pump, washing mud from his hands. He did not look over, neither did she. But she opened and closed the door once more, just to feel it work. Some repairs announced themselves. Some simply stopped making noise. The third week brought trouble in a wagon. A man named Mr. Larkin came from the bank in Mercy Crossing, wearing a good black coat and boots polished badly for prairie mud. He arrived after dinner, when Elias was in the barn and Gideon was mending harness. Clara saw the wagon first from the kitchen window. The man stepped down as if the yard might stain him permanently. He asked for Mr. Rourke. Clara said, "He's with the stock." "I can wait inside." "No." Mr. Larkin blinked. "Beg pardon?" "You can wait on the porch. The floor is drying." It was not, but he did not know that. Elias came from the barn a few minutes later and removed his gloves when he saw the man. Gideon stopped mending harness but did not come closer. Clara stayed in the kitchen with the window cracked. She did not intend to listen. Then she heard the words, "note due," and listening became a practical matter. Mr. Larkin spoke gently, which made Clara distrust him more. The bank had been patient. The dry season had hurt everyone. No one wanted to see a good place fail. There was interest from a cattleman east of the county line in buying the lower acreage before winter. Elias said the lower acreage was not for sale. Mr. Larkin sighed like a schoolmaster disappointed in an arithmetic lesson. "That land has not yielded hay in years." "It will." "When?" Elias did not answer fast enough. Mr. Larkin continued, "Hope is not collateral." Clara stood very still by the stove. She had heard men say things like that before. Not the same words, the same shape. Words that pretended to be wisdom while making a person smaller. Elias said, "I need until June. The note is due in January. The spring is open." "A spring is not a payment." Gideon's voice came then, rough and low. "Neither is selling the part that might save us." Mr. Larkin said, "Sentiment is expensive." Clara wiped her hands, opened the door, and stepped onto the porch. The three men turned. She looked at Elias. "How much hay did that meadow cut when it was watered?" He frowned. "In my father's ledger?" "Yes." 60 tons in a good year, 40 in a middling one. Mr. Larkin's expression sharpened. "Mrs. Wren. Mrs. Wren, this is not—" She did not look at him. "How many head can 40 tons carry through a hard winter if you buy carefully and don't waste?" Gideon answered before Elias could. "Enough." Clara looked at Mr. Larkin then. "That lower acreage is not dead. It was unwet. There's a difference." The banker smiled without warmth. "And you are an expert in dead land?" "No," Clara said. "I am acquainted with being mistaken for it." No one spoke. The wind moved under the porch roof and rattled one loose nail against the tin flashing. Mr. Larkin left a paper with Elias and drove away before the light went. That night supper was quiet in a different way. Not the easy silence they had been building. A hard one. A silence with the bank's January date sitting at the table like a fourth person. After Gideon went to the bunkhouse, Elias stayed at the kitchen table with the papers spread before him. Clara washed the plates, dried them, stacked them, and waited for him to say what he needed to say. At last, he said, "My wife used to say I could outweight weather, but not numbers." Clara put the towel over the basin. "Was she right?" "Often." "Then don't outweight them." He looked up. She came to the table and turned the paper toward herself. The debt was not impossible. That almost made it worse. Impossible things free a person from calculation. Narrow things make him count every nail. Clara read the figures twice. "If you sell the meadow," she said, "you make the January note and lose the hay that would make the next one." "Yes." "If you keep it and it fails, you lose the place." "Yes." "Then the question is not whether you can afford to dig." His eyes held hers. "The question is whether you can afford to stop." Elias looked toward the window. Beyond it, the yard was black, the barn a darker shape against the dark, the low country hidden where the old feeder cut ran under frost. He said, "You talk as if water running once is a promise." "No," Clara said. "I talk as if water running once is evidence." That was the first night he called her Clara, not Mrs. Wren, not ma'am. Clara. He said it while reaching for the ledger she had brought from the shelf, and it came out so naturally that both of them heard it only after it had already landed. Neither made anything of it. But after he went out, Clara sat a while longer with the ledger open and her hands folded on the table. The house was quiet. The door latch did not stick. That winter did not become easy. The spring water had to be kept moving. Ice formed along the channel and broke the shallow banks in 2 places. Elias and Gideon cut brush and laid it along the edges. Clara boiled water for their hands when they came back numb. Twice a cow broke through the crust at the lower draw and had to be hauled out with rope and patience. Once the windmill froze, and Gideon declared the entire contraption a Protestant punishment, though no one knew for what. But the cattle began to change. Not all at once. That would have made the story simpler and less true. They drank from the spring trough when Elias rigged a temporary run of pipe from the feeder. The red cow that had turned from the windmill water started chewing again. The coats did not shine, but they stopped looking like dust had grown out of them. Calves that had stood tucked and dull began nosing through the straw. Clara kept the books. She kept them in a square hand, with feed costs in one column, repairs in another, and a small mark beside every animal that gained back weight. Elias teased her once that she wrote as if the ledger might be called to testify. "It might," she said. In January, Elias took 2 hides, a team collar he could spare, and Clara's figures to Mercy Crossing. He came back after dark. Clara heard the wagon before she saw it. She stood in the kitchen doorway with a lamp in her hand as he came up the steps. He removed his hat. "Extension to June," he said. Gideon, sitting by the stove, closed his eyes. Clara asked, "On what terms?" Elias took the folded bank paper from his coat and laid it on the table. "Bad ones." "Bad is better than finished." He looked at her, then at the lamp between them. "Yes." The first calf came in a sleet storm in March. Clara woke before Elias knocked on the wall beside the pantry room. She had already heard the cow from sleep, that low, strange sound a person does not forget after hearing it once. She dressed in the dark. Outside, the sleet needled sideways. The lantern flame bent and trembled. Gideon was in the barn with a rope around his shoulder, muttering encouragement and insults in equal measure. The calf came wrong, one leg back. Elias's face tightened when he saw it. Gideon said they might lose both. Clara rolled her sleeves above the elbow and told them to hold the cow steady. No one asked if she knew what she was doing. There was no time, and by then they had learned. The work was ugly, cold, and careful. The cow strained. The lantern smoked. The sleet hit the barn roof like thrown sand. Clara found the leg, turned the shoulder, and worked with the contraction instead of against it, the way her father had taught her beside dairy stalls on spring nights so long ago they felt borrowed from another life. When the calf finally slid onto the straw, Gideon made a sound like a prayer he had forgotten the words to. For one terrible second it did not move. Then Clara cleared its nose with her fingers and rubbed hard along the ribs. "Come on," she said. The calf coughed. Elias looked at Clara across the lantern light. His face was wet from weather or sweat or something he would never name. By morning the calf was standing badly, but standing. Gideon declared it the stupidest calf on the place and then checked on it 6 times before noon. Spring came faster after that. Not easy. Fast. The lower meadow greened from the old feeder channel outward, a dark seam spreading into the pale. First sedge, then grass, then the first honest stand of hay Clara had seen since she arrived. Elias fenced the ridgeline with posts he had been saving for 2 years and pretending he did not need. Gideon taught the 2 hired brothers how to cut the meadow without tearing the new growth out by the roots. Clara ran figures until the pencil wore flat on one side. By May, the ranch had taken in 8 calves and lost none. By June, the banknote was not solved, but it was no longer a noose. Elias sold 4 steers, paid interest, bought seed, and kept the lower meadow. The Mercy Crossing paper printed 6 sentences about it under the heading, "Old Rourke Spring Runs Again." They got the acreage mostly right. They got the head count wrong. They spelled Clara's name Claire. She corrected it in pencil and tucked the clipping into the ledger. Elias found it 3 days later. He read the correction, looked at her, and said, "They left out the important part." "The spelling?" "The person who found the spring." She dipped her pen and wrote another number in the feed column. The spring was not lost, she said. It was covered. He stood there a moment longer. So were some other things, he said. Clara did not look up right away. When she did, he had already gone out to the porch. The second chair appeared in July. Elias built it from old barn plank, sanded smooth where the hands would rest, left rough where it did not matter. He worked on it in the evenings after the stock were settled. He did not announce it. He did not present it like a gift. One morning it was simply there beside the first chair, both of them facing south toward the low meadow. Clara saw it through the kitchen window and stood still with a dish towel in her hands. Gideon came in behind her, looked out, and said, "About time." She gave him a look. He took one step back. "Coffee ready?" That evening, Clara sat in the new chair. Elias sat in the old one. Neither spoke for a while. The meadow below them moved in a slow green sheet. Cattle grazed where the water had returned. The red cow stood knee-deep in grass with her calf beside her, both heads down, both ordinary in the most astonishing way. The house behind them held the smell of bread, lamp oil, and summer dust. Clara's sewing basket rested by her chair, the clasp still broken. Elias had offered twice to fix it. She had refused twice, though she did not know why. Maybe some broken things had served long enough to become familiar. Maybe she had not been ready to let every old habit go at once. A nighthawk cut over the yard. Gideon shut the barn. The windmill turned above the well, still drawing its bitter water from deep below, but no longer pretending to be the only answer. Elias said, "I wrote sour water because I didn't know how else to ask." Clara kept her eyes on the meadow. "Ask what?" "Whether somebody could see what I couldn't." She folded her hands in her lap. "You saw it?" "No," he said. "I stood over it for years." The light thinned along the grass. South of the ridge, the feeder channel caught the sunset in small pieces. Not enough to shine from a distance, enough to prove it was there. Clara thought of the platform at Mercy Crossing, the plain letter, the sentence that did not belong in an advertisement, the room with the south window, the white crust on the trough, the old stone spring breathing cold under mud. She had believed, for a long time, that life only took shape by what was taken from it: a husband, a child, a home, a name written correctly only by her own hand. But the low places had their own way of keeping memory. Under silt, under root, under seasons of being mistaken for useless ground, waiting for someone to believe they were not empty. Elias reached down beside his chair and lifted her sewing basket. He had not fixed the clasp. He had tied it shut with a narrow strip of soft leather, neat enough to hold, loose enough to untie whenever she wanted. He set it back by her feet. Clara looked at it for a long moment, and she looked at him. No promise passed between them, not in words, not yet. But when the last light left the meadow, neither of them rose. The high ground had kept its pride. The low place had kept the ranch.